Okay, we're going to call to order the meeting of March 11th, 2024 of the Planning Commission. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody could rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we'll have a roll call.
Commissioner Crabman. Commissioner Lee. Commissioner McMorris.
Is currently not present.
Vice Chair Schwartz.
Will be absent.
And Chair Kloetter.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, tonight's meeting is live streamed on Cable Channel 3 on our online platforms. Let's see, this is a time for public comment. Directions are, this is the time set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission. Can we forego with that since we don't have public? Okay. Sam, did you have anything to add?
I do. For item number 2, just want to point out that it is a typo. That was something that was pointed out by Vice Chair Schwartz. He just wanted to make sure that he wasn't missing a vote for his position. But it is also an opportunity for planning staff to remind the commission that commission application is up, both for Chair Kloetter, Commissioner Crabman, as well as Commissioner McMorris, so 3 seats. The term is up in May. So to get in the application, the online application for interviews in April. But staff just wanted to point out that that was a carryover from something else incorrectly. That's it.
All right, we will move along to the consent calendar. And let's see, we have 2 items tonight. One is the approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Okay. And no changes, no comments? And then we also have the general plan annual progress report for the 2023 calendar year. I believe we reviewed that previously. And do we have any corrections or comments on that? That was item B in our package. Anybody? Hey, Sean. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes and the general plan?
Before we take that motion, do you want to make sure we reflect that the commissioner has joined us
Oh, thank you.
so that our minutes are accurate?
Yeah, for the roll call, Commissioner McMorris. Thank you.
Okay. Motion to approve the minutes and the general plan. Progress report. Okay. I'll second that. And vote.
Yes. Commissioner Crabman. Commissioner Lee. Commissioner McMorris.
Yes.
And Chair Kloetter.
I'm going to have to pass on that one also. I was out last month.
Do we have a vote?
Yeah, you would just, because it's not a majority, you'd have to push it to the next meeting. People who were not here, you still can vote on this if you review, if you, for example, watch the meeting and you've read minutes and you've said, oh yeah, they accurately reflect what happened in the meeting. You're still allowed to vote on it if you want to. You don't have to abstain.
Okay. Let's take that.
Just comment if you don't know it.
Yes. Okay.
I have reviewed the minutes and I have reviewed the progress report.
Okay, to review. Commissioner Lee is still, oh, yes, okay. Chair Kloetter is a
Is a yes.
Commissioner Crabman is abstain. And, yes, and Commissioner McMorris. Is it a yes? Okay, so the vote is 3-0. Motion carried.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right. Okay, so our first item, let me get to it here. Let's see, this is the housing element, okay. We've got the general plan housing element annual progress report. It's so similar to the first one, I want to make sure I've got the right one here. Anyway, Sam, you'll be doing the staff report on that one?
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. This item in particular is separated from the general plan annual progress report, just to provide a little bit more detail in the progress that the city is making in meeting its RENA. So item 3A, again, is the city's annual housing progress report, and this is required by the Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, and also by housing laws. This housing progress report falls within the sixth housing cycle, and it covers the years between 2021 and 2029. And this is the second report for this 8-year planning period, and it summarizes the number of units that have been permitted and approved in 2023. And the annual progress report is utilized by the state to track and monitor the city's progress, again, in addressing the regional housing needs allocation, the RENA. This table, the font can be a little bit bigger, but if you're to see the agenda on the city's website, you can see the numbers. But essentially, it's a reminder, in the last housing cycle, the fifth cycle between 2023 and 2021, the city was allocated the 940 units. By the end of the 8-year cycle, about 50% of the units were accomplished. Now we are in the next housing cycle. And as the Commission has discussed on several occasions, the city's allocation for this housing cycle is substantially more units than the last cycle. And what this table shows in the 2-year planning period is just the number of units that have been permitted thus far. And so this annual housing report, again, requires the city to report units that have been approved, entitled, and permitted, but only the units that have obtained building permits are counted towards meeting the RENA allocation. The total number of units that was allocated to the city of San Gabriel in this cycle, again, is 3,023 units, and the second year in, we are about 113 units permitted. So this is pretty typical. What is not reflected here would be the projects that have been recently entitled by the Commission. So if the Commission remembers, 1975 Del Mar, that had a substantial number of units. Also Pacific Plaza on San Gabriel Boulevard, that had a significant number of units, but because they have not paid for permits, those numbers are not reflected here. And also relatively recently, but in this year, in 2024, was the Rubio project, and those units are also not reflected here. So just in case the Commission is wondering why the number is still relatively lower, is for this reason. Again, only permitted units are counted towards the RENA. And so with that, staff's recommendation this evening is to recommend approval to the City Council to direct staff to submit this report to the Department of Housing and Community Development to meet its annual reporting requirements per state housing laws. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Do we have any comments or questions before we open it up and close it again for the community comment?
Correct. Right, so the requirement from the state is to provide policies and programs which have been identified in the housing element to make sure that the city facilitates for housing development. So not necessarily constructing the 3,000 units, but that when it comes to entitlement process, when it comes to whether or not projects can be reviewed administratively or through public hearings, density bonus allowances. So just to make sure that all of that is in place so that when a housing development company or a property owner wants to construct more units, that the city has those policies and regulations in place to do so. So the requirement is not that the city must absolutely construct those units, but just have everything in place so that when projects do come in, that they are not met with local constraints through the development standards or through any other city requirements to prevent them from being able to build housing.
I think a good example of that would be the ADUs and how we had to go through that whole process to make sure that our guidelines fit in with the state guidelines, but we're still tried to work with the community. And when you look at the level of construction and permits, the lion's share of that goes to the ADUs. So, I mean, that's a big number. Yeah. So, it's a program that, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna, I guess we can't forego the public hearing, but we're going to open the public hearing and then immediately close the public hearing and open it up for commissioner discussion. No, we actually went over that already, but yep, so we're fine. Thank you, though.
Excuse me, just as a matter of clarification, the public hearing is still ongoing. This is all part of it right here.
Okay.
You are opening and closing public testimony.
Or comment.
Right.
Correct. Thank
But
you.
with the hearing itself, we're still ongoing until after you've concluded your vote.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this is a good example of our job. This is what we do. You know, we have the guidelines that have been laid down by the state. We've done our best with some pretty good, amazing work by the staff to come up with some of the ways that we can meet the guidelines. And then the market takes over. You know, I was just having a conversation the other day with, you know, why aren't they building more? And why don't we have more affordable housing and this? And it's, well, you find me the developer who's going to come in and build the buildings and you know, spend the money and, you know, and do everything that needs to happen for that to go forward. And then, you know, we're coming out of, you know, 3 or 4 years of some pretty depressed economies in the real estate market with the pandemic. So it's good to see things starting to pick up again, but it's going to take a couple of years. And that's a double whammy right there. Right. Yep. Yep. So anyway, those are pressures that come to bear, and to answer things, comment about what happens when you don't meet those guidelines. Well, it's not all our decision. It's those decisions come from all over. So anybody else? Sean?
Yeah, no, I know that the whole system changed this cycle, and every city has been allocated a lot more housing than, well, at least in our area, than previous. So, and I totally get that the markets are recovering from the pandemic. I just want to note on the record that I believe that the city should implement an inclusionary housing ordinance sometime in the near future, and I hope that our commission and the council will consider that and take that up to really account for the extreme shortfall of affordable housing that we have in the city.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Gentlemen, anything? Okay. All right, I'm going to, let me find I'll move to adopt the resolution of the Planning Commission recommending the City Council receive and accept the Housing Element Annual Progress Report for the 2023 calendar year and authorize staff to submit the report to the California Department of Housing and Community Development, which is the HCD. And from our group, that would be without any changes. So that's my motion, and do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay. Jackie?
Commissioner Krapman,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee, Commissioner McMorris,
Yes.
and Chair Cluitter.
Yes.
Vote is 4-0, motion passed.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Samantha, anything you'd like to share?
Nothing else, Chair, thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, anything on the calendar? Any concerns or wishes? Not tonight?
I have a quick question. What happened to the other items that you put it over here, general plan implementation, annual progress report?
That was in the,
There's no action to be taken on that. It's just a receive and file, so you have the report, and I don't know.
we had to acknowledge it, though, and it was in the,
It was in the consent calendar.
consent calendar,
Yeah,
thank you.
If it is something that you could ask to be pulled from the consent calendar if you wanted to have a discussion about it or have a presentation made, but
Oh, okay.
that would be at your discretion. Otherwise, it just goes in the bundle with the minutes.
This is just information only?
Correct.
So I have a quick question to Sam, though. Is it the format that you're going to be presenting it to the city council and then to the state?
Yes, that's correct.
Whatever you're providing it to us?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know, I should make a comment on that, but should we? It's not part of the agenda, so
No, it is
It is
part of the agenda. That's
It's
fine.
part of the agenda. Oh, okay, okay.
We try to be fairly informal here, so even though we have dealt with that part of it, if you have a comment, come on, this is time for commissioner comment.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
This is good.
All right, let's see. I jot down a few notes. Let me see. So it is called annual report, but it looks like your report goes back to 2018 and 2019. Is it just a formality, like the format is like that, or?
No, that's just staff's, that's how staff is presenting it. And the reason for that is if one, for example, the current planning staff is relatively newer, we've only been around for the past 4 years. Same thing with commissioners, as commissioners cycle through. It's just an opportunity to show that we're at the 20-year mark, actually, for this general plan, and it's to show really the progress that has been made throughout these 20 years. Otherwise, if staff is only presenting the annual updates, it's hard to get that bigger picture that a lot has been accomplished these past 20 years if you're just looking at the items that are accomplished year to year. So there could be a simpler way to just show it per 2023 accomplishments. But it is helpful in particular for those projects that have overlaps that run several years to kind of see the starting point, the progress, and then eventually when it gets completed. So it's just a staff preference to write it in that
No,
way.
I mean, like, for me, as a newcomer to the commissions, it'll help me a lot to see the history of it. But when we call it annual report, I was expecting, right, just like 2023, that's why I'm asking, is it the format that you're going to be presented to the city council and to the state, the whole thing?
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
Yes. Yes, so the report gets forwarded to the state in that way. And historically, they haven't provided comments that maybe staff should keep it to a singular year for an annual
Yeah,
report.
I would suggest that. And then.
It's like the traffic light synchronization. That's been going on for years. You know, just going through the whole process. You got to get the funding. You got to do, you know, it doesn't just happen. So, and then they didn't, like something like that doesn't get completed right away even. You know, you have to phase it. And so you started last year, we're working on it this year, we'll finish it next year. So, and then that's also the function of the general plan. You know, it's just a master guideline. It doesn't have a calendar tied to it. It's 20 years old, and I'll say that thing has held up. It has held up really well. Hmm?
Oh, I was just 20 years old. Yeah.
I was here when we passed it.
So that's one of my comments, and then the other one is like kind of like checking on the status of the projects, right? So I was listening to the city council meeting like couple, I think last month or so. They were talking about the pickleball, right? That was a kind of heated debate. In that meeting, they were talking about remodeling the pool and then working on the bathrooms, right? But in your report, it is calling out as a completed, right? So I was just wondering, like, whether we should double check the status of the projects, or like kind of like relook at whatever you put it in your the report.
I think that one may be an example. Again, the Public Works Department also helps to proof this report, so it's not solely the Planning Department. So any of the elements that involve the other city departments, it does get sent over to them just to make sure that that is something that's either ongoing or it is completed. I think that project in particular, it was based, as mentioned by the chair, on funding and what the funding authorized, and I think there were partial improvements that were completed, such as the restroom. However, there wasn't funding for the swimming pool, so I think that was a part of some of those discussions with the city council, that although the grant funding application was for a comprehensive project, and that's typically what comes along with grant funding, the funding requires that an agency identifies a project, but as far as how much funding the agency would ultimately receive and what the city can use that funding on, I mean, that varies. And again, as mentioned by the chair, that's why sometimes there's this lap in years from when first the funding application, being awarded the funding, and then awarding the contract to a company, and then doing the actual work and the different phasing of a project. So in particular, when it comes to capital improvement projects with Public Works, it does take a substantial amount of time. So although something has been identified as a completed work, that component of the project is completed, and short of funding being available for the other components, that's why it doesn't list maybe the swimming pool being completed.
Okay, yeah, but when I read the report, it says completed, and then I just like recall the meeting that I was listening into, right? Recently, about a month ago or so, right? They were complaining about, hey, why can't we renovate the pool, and then why can't we renovate the restrooms? And then the report said otherwise, right? So I was just like confused. So just want to suggest it to you, like to double check on your information. And also, nearby where I live, Mission and Las Tunas, the eastbound and westbound left turns, it is called 90% complete, right? But the signal means up and running for some time already, so I'm not quite sure what's the status on why you say 90%, right? Double check on your information. And some of the thing at the end you were noting as a like, what do you say? Target 3.1.4 or whatever those things. I was trying to look for a reference material, like what does this mean, right? So maybe like I'm not familiar with the format, right? But if you have something like a footnote or something that would be helpful, you know, like I'm not quite sure. Like because that confused me a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a helpful question. Actually, the targets and the goals are pulled directly from the general plan. So staff can mention that next time, that is taken, that's direct verbiage. And then what follows beneath each target and goal is,
Like, you don't have to like put it in the, like omit it or something.
Oh.
The state wouldn't know, right? Because the main point is all these like explanations on what projects being, what status, right? But these like target 3.14, some of the goals are like numbers are repeated. I was like confused, like why is it like the same number go 1.1.4 and then a few lines down is at 1.1.4, the same thing. So yeah, so the format and then it's a little confusing for me. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? All right, we are adjourned, and when do we get back together? Let's see, we will go adjourned until April 8th at 6:30.